Welcome to Bobcat Blastoff, where we'll take a look back at last week's St. Landry Parish Jamboree. We'll talk with head coach Paul Trosclair and a rundown on all the area high school games on this first week of the high school football regular season. Hello, everyone. I'm John Beltran. Glad to be with you for week one of a show that will run throughout the entire regular season and the postseason. Hopefully, the Bobcats will go deep into that postseason. Last week, what a game it was. Jamboree between the Port Barre Red Devils and your Eunice Bobcats. The first one held at Bobcat Field. At least if we're talking in terms of the St. Landry Parish Jamboree. And a quick start for the Eunice Bobcats. Their first drive, they took the ball at the 26-yard line and drove it on the ground, exclusively on the ground, 74 yards. And it was capped off by this long run.
A read. In motion is Pettigo. The handoff to Freeman. Freeman's got a hole. Big time. He is gone. A touchdown. 52 yards for Tim Freeman. Eunice leads 6-0.
However, the extra point was missed, so the Bobcats led 6-0. Port Barre got the ball 3 and out. They took it at the 42-yard line of Eunice following a very nice return, but a 17-yard penalty started that drive, and then this defensive play.
Two receivers split to the right. Quarterback is back to throw, rolling right, gets some pressure. He's going to be sacked by number 99, Lee Miller.
And then the ensuing play resulted in this turnover.
It's 2nd and 36 from the 30. The handoff and a fumble. That will be recovered by the Eunice Bobcats.
And Harry Frank,
as the ball was stripped off Higdon's hands. And let's see the man who's got it. There's several players right there, and it's Brennan Bertrand recovering the ball at the 29-yard line.
The Bobcats made quick work of the Port Barre defense, taking the ball over at the 29, as I just mentioned. First, a 15-yard pass to Kyrus Hebert by quarterback Donnie Ballack, and then another touchdown run.
Again, Reed, the lone setback. Hebert out to the right. In motion is Freeman. It will be given to Reed. Reed is free. He scores. 14-yard touchdown across the right side, and he was there faster than I could describe it.
However, the two-point conversion was literally dropped in the end zone, so Eunice led 12-0. Port Barre got the football back. Very much of the same. 3 plays, 6 yards, a 33-yard punt by Lance LeBlanc, and a 15-yard return by Ballack. Put the ball at the Port Barre 44-yard line, and Eunice needed just 4 plays before taking an 18-0 lead.
Let's see what Ballack decides here. He's going to hand it off to Jeremy Reed. He'll score his second touchdown of the game.
And this time, the Bobcats went for the 2-point conversion. Were they successful? Donnie Ballack would provide the answer to us right now.
Ballack here will take it himself. He will score.
And the Bobcats led 20-0. A very quick description right there. Port Barre got the ball back to end the first half. However, they ran 2 plays, started at their own 21, amassed just 1 yard, so the Bobcats led at halftime 20-0. The first half stats actually were very ugly if you're a Port Barre fan, and they were first-timers, you could tell. Port Barre with 4 yards rushing and no first downs. The Eunice Bobcats with 147 yards of total offense and just 4 first downs because they did have those 2 big plays on the ground. In the second half, Port Barre received the opening kickoff, and they took it all the way back to the Eunice 47. This is a concern for head coach Paul Trosclair. The special teams, the kickoff coverage just didn't play very well in this ball game, but 2 consecutive penalties by Port Barre put the ball all the way back at their own 33-yard line, and then Derek Myers came up with this defensive play.
Dylan Duplashan, you're right. Wide receiver to the right. Bing rolls that way. Looks, throws, passes intercepted at the 29 by Myers. 30-35, cuts right side, will sweep to the 40. 45-50. He's got a couple of men to beat, but he will be tackled from behind at the 41-yard line. A return of 30 yards, and Barry, we're looking at a flag. Looks like it's against Eunice.
Okay.
The Bobcats ran just 2 plays. They amassed 11 yards, and then they committed their first turnover.
2nd and 5. In motion is Pinckney. Ballack will hand it off inside, a first down and a fumble at the 49-yard line. That'll be recovered by Port Barre.
Joe Swallow, who fumbled the ball, would later make up for that, and we'll talk about that in just a couple of seconds. Port Barre took the ball over at the 50-yard line. They were able to gain 10 yards, but they could go nowhere, and that's because Derek Myers would make another great defensive play.
Wide receiver in the slot is Dylan Duplashan. Bing will pitch left to Jerome Pinckney, who's got a nice hole across the left side. Fumbles. That ball was very after Eunice had it. But Eunice now is signaling they have it, and they do. And Derek Myers, I believe, has his ball in the right hand, and he does.
Port Barre started their drive at the 50. Now Eunice starts their drive at the 50. And guess what? 2 plays, 50 yards. After losing 3 yards in the first play, they gained all 53 back on the very next one, and here it is.
2nd and 13 in motion to the left is James Skinner. Handoff up the middle is going to be a touchdown for Joe Swallow. He is to the 5. No, he's in. He dives in. The touchdown from 53 yards. He just busted it up the middle, and he was gone.
And that's what we talked about earlier. Joe Swallow making up for that fumble with a nice touchdown run. Port Barre would get the ball back on their own 35-yard line. However, 3 plays, 1 yard, that was it. They had to punt. The Eunice Bobcat defense was dominant all day, of course, forcing 3 turnovers while committing just 1. And then Eunice took the ball over, ended the game, 3 plays, 7 yards, taking over at their own 35-yard line. So the final score was Eunice in dominating fashion, 27, Port Barre nothing. Now, in the first half, we told you that Eunice had 147 yards and Port Barre 4. Well, Port Barre closed the gap considerably in the second half. They did gain 31 yards. Eunice outgained them by 37, 68 of their own. So totals in the ball game, Port Barre with just 35 yards of total offense. You've got to remember, this is a team that finished 10-2 a year ago. Eunice, meanwhile, 215 yards, 35 of those in the air, and 180 of those on the ground. Let's go through the individual statistics. Offensively for the Bobcats, Jeremy Reed scored a couple of touchdowns. He had 4 carries for 22 yards. Donnie Bollock, not only can he throw, kick, and punt, he can also run. 3 carries for 33 yards. Joe Swallow did have the fumble. However, he had 59 yards on 2 carries, and, of course, the touchdown. Tim Freeman, he scored a touchdown, 3 carries, 57 yards, a nice 19-yard average. Casey Pettigo got some action in the ball game, 1 carry for 5 yards. Chip Malvo, 2 carries, didn't gain a yard. He lost 3, then he gained 3. Bubba Olivier was in the game briefly. He had a carry for a -3. And David Thibodeau, a backup running back, had 1 carry for 7 yards. In the air, Donnie Bollock threw 2 passes, and guess what? He completed them both for 35 yards. And the man on the receiving end of those passes was Kyrus Hebert. Just did a tremendous job getting wide open, running some very crisp patterns. He caught those passes again. 2 receptions for him for 35 yards. The Bobcats looked as impressive as they did last season when they finished 9-1 in the regular season, and of course won their first playoff game against Marksville before losing to Hammond. So if they can continue that momentum where they obviously established last year and that they picked up in this Jamboree, they should be very successful in their first game against Opelousas, who, by the way, was also in this Jamboree. They defeated Bo Shane 13-0, running the ball very well. They have a quarterback who can pass the ball. However, he was off on a lot of his passes. If he can get it going, that will present some problems for the Eunice secondary. Incidentally, Northwest defeated North Central in the first game of the St. Landry Parish Jamboree, 14-0. Joining us is Bobcats head coach Paul Trosclair. Coach, your team last season finished 9-1 in the regular season, won that first playoff game, and like the other major boys sports team, they were bitten by that second-round playoff game. Knowing that your team is ranked 7th right now, does that put a little bit more pressure on you, not necessarily just to win games, but to keep your players mentally focused, knowing they're supposed to perform so well this season?
Well, we have a tough schedule, so we have to be mentally ready. The ranking really is meaningless. That's just people's opinion, and really you have to play it on the football field. And if we're not ready with the schedule we have, we'll be unranked soon.
Let's talk about the very first game before we get into some of the players and your offensive and defensive philosophies. Does it magnify the importance of the first game, considering you're playing a quality opponent like Opelousas? It's on the road, and then you have 6 of your next games, of your next 8 games at home.
Well, it's not the first game that we really would like to play, but it's the only game I could find. And but I wanted to challenge our football team, so this is a challenge. And being on the road is more of a challenge. And Opelousas has 18 starters back. So we'll find out exactly where we stand Friday night.
Now, Opelousas ran the ball pretty well against Bo Shane, and they had some receivers open, although their passing game wasn't as successful as it should have been. What do you look from them in this game, just to attack you through the running game offensively?
We expect a very physical football game. I think they're going to attack us and run right at us. And that's been, if we have a weakness on defense, it's been the straight-ahead attack. And I think they will exploit that. And, of course, they'll throw the ball some. I hope those receivers continue to drop those passes they did Friday night.
Now, let's talk about your defense. Does it with Brennan Bertrand, who's now at the linebacker position. I've been told that Eunice High really over the past several years has never really had a linebacker who can run from sideline to sideline like a Brennan Bertrand. How's the adjustment been for him?
Well, our linebackers last year were very good, but they were 5'9" and 5'7". Brennan happens to be 6'5", so you can see him running from side to side. You couldn't see the ones last year, but they were really excellent linebackers, Frank O'Gilry and Jason Fontenot. But Brennan's really adapted well. I think he's a natural for that position.
And what about Harry Frank? Obviously, he's an all-stater. He's the anchor of the defense. Is too much made of this that 4 players are returning from last year's team as starters, and now maybe it puts a little bit more pressure on Harry Frank because he's got some inexperience with him on the defensive line?
Well, we do have a little inexperience there, but we have some pretty good players there, and it's just they need some game experience. And, you know, Harry is he's the guy everybody looks to make the big plays, and he needs to come through for us.
Now, I know last year you had a freshman team that finished undefeated, and you have 24 sophomores on this ball club. Fred Guillory played a pretty good game against Port Barre in a jamboree. Do you have any other sophomores who will be coming up and playing, or will they be coming in when the game is really out of hand?
Well, Fred's probably the only sophomore right now that could step on the field any time and play against anybody. He's really advanced. Yeah, this is a good class, and we look for him next year to move up. They'll have to step up next year.
Now, offensively, Josh Andrews of St. Edmunds, he kicks, he punts, and he quarterbacks, and Donnie Bollock does the same. Is there anything this guy can do?
I haven't found it yet. Donnie's a great student, a great kid to be around. He does everything for us. He played defensive back last year, so he wants to play there now. We just won't let him. And he could do that if we needed that also.
Now, staying with the offense, a couple of weeks ago at a Booster Club meeting, you said that the offense couldn't penetrate through the defense. Was your defense that good? And has your offense improved after their excellent performance against Port Barre?
Well, what happens is your defense goes against your offense so much that they know everything you do. They know our offense as well as we do, so it makes it much more difficult. And I think going against a different team showed that we do have some offensive firepower, and we can move the football.
Is sometimes your offense's greatest challenges during practice against this defense?
It gets pretty tough now. We don't do it much during the season, but during the spring we match up almost every day, and it's a pretty good battle.
Now, a lot of coaches talk about balance. They like to run and pass a certain amount of times, but with the success of your running game, especially if it continues throughout the course of the regular season, are you just going to pass in situations where maybe you need some big-time yardage in a very quick amount of time?
Well, we like to run the football. There are some teams you play against that take it away from you. Then I think our passing game will really come in for us. And you know, we feel like that makes us balanced. We can pass if we need to pass the football.
Now, Donnie threw just 2 complete passes, one for 50 and one to 20 for 20 yards to Kyrus Hebert in the Jamboree. Let's talk about your receivers besides Kyrus Hebert, who I thought ran some excellent routes. When Donnie threw it to him, he was wide open.
Besides Kyrus, who's a great receiver, we have Roy Gilry, and Roy also plays cornerback for us, and then we have Casey Pettigo. And we have a pretty good receiving corps. We feel good about throwing the football to them.
Now, looking at special teams a little bit, very quickly, because that was a problem during St. Edmunds' Jamboree. Your special team seemed to play pretty well, except with the opening kickoff, if I remember correctly, against Port Barre. How does the special teams stand right now? Because in close games, special teams can often really make the difference.
Well, we feel pretty good about our special teams. The only letdown we had was our kickoff coverage. It was terrible. And usually at this time of year, most people's kickoff coverage is pretty bad. It needs to get a lot better Friday night.
Has your team caught up with the rest of the teams in the district, namely Crowley, since they lost so many players who really are playing Division I ball right now?
Well, we don't know yet. We'll have to wait and see how they do through the course of the season. But Crowley's always going to turn it up against Eunice. You can count on that. It doesn't matter. They may not win a game until then, but they'll be ready to play.
Now let's talk about 6 home games you have. How important is that for this team? Some people say, well, it's better at higher levels in college and pro where you have 5 figures of people watching a ball game at your home stadium. Here you might have 3, 4, 5,000, whatever the number may be, but you got to be comfortable about 6 home games for you.
Well, the thing about it is we play well on the road. It's been that way the last couple of years. So we're hoping that it provides an advantage for us, but we haven't seen that yet.
And the rest of your district schedule, you have DeRidder, you have Leesville. Again, you've only got a couple of district games on the road, so you're feeling confident with your team on the road that they'll be able to perform no matter what.
You know, the past couple of years, our teams have been a good road team, and it needs to be. We have to go to DeRidder, and that's going to be a big game because it's our first district game. Then we finish at Leesville, and you know, we played great at Leesville last year, so we're looking for another good game that night.
Now, I know that the goal is to obviously get to the Superdome, but what does this team have to do to exceed last year's team, finishing 10-2, and get past that second round of the playoffs?
Well, a lot of it depends on your luck of the draw sometimes. You know, last year losing to Crowley put us in a bracket with John Curtis, Walsman, Hammond, and you know, if you fall into that type bracket and if you don't play your best game, you're going to be out. We need to coming out first in our district would give us a chance to have a better bracket, I think, in the playoffs.
So basically the solution is just to simply win the district and perhaps have a better draw.
That would give us a better opportunity, I feel.
Now, approaching midpoint of the season, let's say your team wins 4 or 5 games, you're out to a good start. Injuries sometimes become a concern. How's the depth of this team?
It's not very. Our offensive line and defensive lines are real thin. And we thought we lost Bobby Hamus Friday night, and he's a strong offensive lineman, but he will play Friday. So, you know, it's not very good.
So what's the solution to that? Basically to keep your players healthy, or are there certain times where you might rotate some players in and out of the game?
We'll try to bring the younger guys along in case we need them, because we do have some fill-ins if we need them. It's just we need to be a little lucky on that side, too. That makes a difference.
Now, I just want to address one player in particular who I talked about before, which is Donnie Bollick. If he happens to get injured, obviously there's several roles to fulfill. Who'll be the quarterback, the kicker, the punter, and all those situations, even though hopefully that never happens throughout the course of the regular season.
Well, right now, Derek Myers is our starting strong safety. He's a backup quarterback. He also kicks extra points like Donnie does, and he also kicks off. The punting would be up for grabs, but Derek can do almost everything Donnie does. He's an excellent athlete. The bad part about it for Derek, he's a senior also.
Coach, good luck Friday against Opelousas.
Well, thanks a lot. We'll need it.
That was Eunice head coach Paul Trosclair. We thank him for joining us here before the game. Between the Bobcats and Opelousas, there's several other games to be played in the state of Louisiana. Let's go through all of them. Zachary will be at Baker at 7 o'clock. Woodlawn will take on Central. That's also at 7. Covington at Denham Springs. John Ehret versus Catholic. That will be played at Olympia at 7 o'clock. Broadmoor Baton Rouge will take on East Ascension. Estroma versus Capital. McKinley at Northeast. Lee at Acadiana. Brother Martin at St. Amant. South Terrebonne at Walker. And Brusley versus Bishop Sullivan. Those games in the Baton Rouge area for Class 5 and 4A. Albany will be at Parkview Baptist. Point Coupe Central at Faraday. Notre Dame. Class 6 3A, of course, that's a team that faced the St. Edmunds Blue Jays last week in the Acadia Parish Jamboree. They will be at Port Allen. Cecilia at West Feliciana. Live Oak at Church Point. Grambling will take on Christian Life of Class 2A. Loranger at Jackson. Central Catholic of Morgan City will be at Catholic Point of Coupe. That'll be at 7, of course. Plaquemine at Patterson. Erath at Episcopal. Port Barre at University. Let's see how Port Barre does after that 27-0 thrashing last week against the Bobcats. Dunham School will be at Redemptorist. Ascension Catholic at DeKalb. East Iberville at Falls River. North Iberville will host Breaux Bridge. Vermilion Catholic at St. John Plaquemine. And White Castle at Riverside. And Acadiana, of course, a bunch of games. Moss Point in Mississippi. Finally, a team coming in from out of state for the first game of the year, and they will go to Lake Charles to take on LaGrange. West Jefferson will take on Carencro. St. Thomas More, always a good football team at Lafayette in Class 5 4A, will be at Como. East Jefferson will be at Lafayette. New Iberia at St. Martinville. Washington Marion, who was once in Class 4A and were in the same district last year as the Eunice Bobcats, they will host Sulphur. They're now in Class 5 3A. Crowley, the defending District 4A champions and Class 4A runner-ups, they will play at Northside. Tioga at DeRidder. Westlake will take on Sam Houston, also in Eunice's district. Evangel at Leesville, another team in Eunice's district, as most of these teams in Class or District 4-4A will open up at home. Lake Charles at Boston at Kaplan. Abbeville at Marksville. Beau Chene at Jennings. Franklin at Ellender. Peabody at Northwest. Ville Platte at Oakdale. Bunkie at Iowa. St. Louis will be in Lafayette to take on Turdings Catholic of Class 6-2A. Loreauville at Berkwood. Opelousas Catholic, always a good team. They'll have a tough test in their first game of the season when they travel to Ville Platte to take on the Sacred Heart Trojans, the defending district champions of Class 5-1A. Catholic New Iberia will be at Rain. North Vermilion at Gaydon. Jeanneret at Mamou. DeQuincy will take on South Cameron. Basile at Iota. Kinder at Elton. Welsh at Pickering. Oberlin at Rose Pine. South Beauregard at Maryville, another St. Edmunds' opponent later on this season, talking about Maryville. Vinton at Lake Arthur, Livonia at North Central, East Beauregard at St. Mary's, Westminster at Davison, and of course the other game in Acadiana, St. Edmunds at Hanson Memorial. That game is already underway, as of course are the rest of the 7 o'clock games. In the southeast area, Warren Easton will be at Fontainebleau. It'll be Chalmette at North Shore, St. Paul's Covington at Mandeville, Hammond at Ponchatoula. Carr will take on Slidell. Salmon, they always have a very good team. They've won the Class 5A championship before. They'll be at Rummel. Abramson at Central Lafourche. Jesuit, talk about a strong football team. They've got a strong sports program. They'll be at Destrehan. Sarah Reed at Hawnville. Fortier at South Lafourche. De La Salle at Terrebonne. Carver at Thibodaux. Bogalusa will be in KEUN, Mississippi to take them on. Morgan City at H.L. Bourgeois. Franklinton of Class 9-3A will be at Varnado of Class 8-2A. Franklin will take on Ellender. St. Helena Central at Independence. Assumption at Donaldsonville. Lutcher is at East St. John. St. James at West St. John. Vanderbilt Catholic is at E.D. White. Amite is at South Pike, Mississippi. Crescent City Baptist at St. Thomas Aquinas. Springfield at Fisher. Kentwood at Jewel Sumner. Hannon is at St. Charles Catholic. And in the central portion of the state, Natchitoches Central is at Alexandria. Bolton at Northwood Shreveport. Bunkie is at Iowa. Out of Class 4-3A, Avoyelles is at Gina. Abbeville will take on Marksville. Ville Platte of Class 4-3A is at Oakdale of Class 5-2A. West Ouachita of Class 2-5A will host Pineville. They're in 3-4A. Tioga is at DeRidder. I believe we mentioned that game already before. Block is at Sicily Island. Buckeye is at Grant. Menard at Monty. Rose Pine at Northwood Lena. And Franklin County, Mississippi is at Vidalia. We did have 8 games played last night here in the state of Louisiana. Barbe defeated Glen Oaks 27-0. Clinton by 2 points over Southern Lab 15-13. Maybe a bit of an upset right there considering how good Southern Lab is normally. Terre over Bel Air 27-12. Country Day shut out Burris 8-0. Grace King easily over Clark 29-8. St. James by 2 over West St. John 22-20. Northwood Lena by 2 over the Bolton Junior Varsity team. That was 22-20. And Winsboro all over Delhi 50-0. That's the remaining schedule. Of course, the game we're concerned with tonight, actually a couple of games. Of course, St. Edmunds at Hanson, which is going on right now. And, of course, tonight, right here with King Carl Derwin and Steve Turner, they'll have the game for you shortly. Opelousas High hosting the Eunice Bobcats. The Bobcats have a tremendous amount of talent, coming off a 9-1 regular season, finishing 10-2 overall. They did lose 7 starters on defense, as I talked about with head coach Paul Trosclair. However, they've got Harry Frank back, the All-Stater, 6'5" linebacker Brennan Bertrand, and some nice additions to the secondary, namely Roy Guillory and, of course, Derek Myers, who came up with 2 huge turnovers in that St. Landry Parish Jamboree victory over Port Barre. Offensively, you want to talk about versatility. Donnie Bollock defines it. He can run, he can pass, he's very intelligent, he can do just about anything offensively. He's also a big man on special teams, punting and kicking. He will be a key, obviously, all season for the Bobcats. The running game will also be a primary factor for the Bobcats. Of course, Jeremy Reed, who scored a couple of touchdowns against Port Barre, Tim Freeman, who had that long run, and they do have depth on this team, at least at the running back position. Coach Paul Trosclair was concerned about his bench when we were talking earlier this week. However, at the running back position with Joe Swallow and David Thibodaux, he does feel that his offense can certainly generate a lot of yards on the ground with a lot of players doing that. And, of course, Kyrus Hebert, he will be the primary receiver for the Bobcats this season. King Carl Derwin will be back with Steve Turner for the start of tonight's game, the Bobcats versus Opelousas.